What's going on, guys? Welcome back to episode 2 of the Benchmark podcast. I am your co-host, Danko. With me today is my regular co-host. Obviously, we've made it to episode 2. Marcus, welcome back. Great to have you again.
Absolutely. How are we, Danko? Keen to get into this chat.
I'm pumped. I'm super excited about this podcast. We're going to run a slightly different concept to what we normally do. So today we're actually going to do a similar segment to like a pardon the interruption, a first take kind of concept where we're going to run through 10 topics or approximately 10 topics related to NBA and basketball on a whole, and sort of dissect it, give ourselves a really rapid fire response to it, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy it. Something different. We'll see if we run with this going forward. But I'm really excited about this concept and yeah, keen to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely, Danko. I'm very keen to jump in as well. There's been so much going on in the NBA recently, whether that's not even just the NBA, but just basketball as a whole. You know, we've had the McDonald's All-American game. Playoffs are coming up. We had the Hall of Fame announcements come. I think today it was. So there's a lot going on in the NBA world. And yeah, just keen to get stuck into it.
100%. Like I said, the more topics we talk about, the more excited I get, because at the end of the day, you can focus in on one and really analyze and dissect it. But when you get to talk about numerous things that have happened over the basketball and NBA landscape, it definitely makes things a whole lot more interesting. So I guess to start off with, we'll do a bit of a recap of today's games and some of the ridiculous stat lines that have sort of come into play today, which I was a little bit shocked by. I didn't tune into every single game, but just seeing some of the box scores, seeing some of the stat lines that were being put forward by a couple of the players was ridiculous today. I guess we'll start off with the Bucks and Pacers. Drew Holiday going off for a career high 51.
Bro, it was insane.
To add 8 rebounds, 8 assists to that on 66% from the field. Giannis adding a 38, 17 and 12 stat line on 77%. Absolutely went off. What did you make of that one?
Yeah, that was absolutely ridiculous. Drew Holiday, look, I know the Pacers, they're not obviously in playing contention anymore, but the guy had 45 at the end of the third quarter, which, I mean, that speaks for itself. I think he finished with, what was it, you said 51?
51, career high. First time he's cracked 50 points in his career.
Insane. But yeah, going along with those games, there were some other incredible games that occurred today. Obviously, Russell Westbrook probably had his best game of the season. Balled out. I think he shot 5 for 5 from 3 today against the Memphis, and it's just great to see. It's really the vintage Russell Westbrook we once knew, who was the MVP of the league. I think if he plays like that every night, I know, he definitely makes the Clippers even more of a contending team to go to the finals. And that's against a very stacked Memphis team as well. So, I mean, that's pretty scary come playoff time. What did you think of that, Danko?
Yeah, honestly, that was a really exciting matchup. I loved Russell Westbrook's confidence. I kind of felt like it came back. You saw him drawing away with Dillon Brooks, talking back and forth with the Grizzlies bench. I think it's a dangerous proposition with Westbrook. When he's firing the way he is and the way he did in this game, especially when his 3 balls dropping, the confidence is starting to kick back in with Westbrook. And honestly, I think it's a dangerous sign for teams who have to face the Clippers. If he's going to perform the way he did in this game, look out. But there were some really even contributions across the board from Robert Covington, who finished with 27, and Bones Highland, who chipped in with 20 off the bench. That really helped carry the load for them, with Kawhi and PG obviously missing. And in such a big game where every game now matters towards the playoff picture, this was a really big win for the Clippers. Another big game, obviously.
Sorry.
Yeah, 100%. No, all good. Another big game, Lakers and Bulls. So, again, Lakers need to win as many games as they can to try and cement themselves in that whole playoff picture. AD came up big with 38 and 10. LeBron and Reeves chimed in with 25 and 19 respectively. And I love seeing Reeves give Pat Bev the too small sign. And I don't know if you caught that and whether you caught LeBron's comments after the game. What did you think of that? What did you make of that?
No, I love it. I just love, as a Lakers fan, obviously, Aussie Reeves is just, he just plays with so much pride in that jersey, and just to see him come out, talk trash to Pat Bev. He's been a real spark plug for us of recent and as of this season as well. But he comes in, he has, 19, I think maybe early 20s, kills it. He's just reliable. I think, look, if we sneak in that play in, ultimately I think we make the playoffs. And if we make the playoffs, we're a contending team. So it was really good to see the Lakers today. LeBron hasn't lost a step, it looks like, from that injury. AD went crazy. And Reeves is just really good. So, yeah, overall, the Lakers, it's good. It's good we didn't lose to Chicago again.
100%. And I think with the most important part of your lineup and your team is when AD plays with aggressiveness and confidence. I don't think there's a lot of teams that can stop him. I think that his own worst enemy is himself at times, and obviously the organisation sometimes shutting him down, whether it be on a back-to-back. I get come playoff time that's going to change, but when you have a guy like AD who's so important and can provide such a headache and a nightmare for the opposition night in, night out, you really need him to be there for the Lakers to stand any chance. That obviously has shown throughout the season when he hasn't been there or when he hasn't performed to his ability. The Lakers don't perform the same way. So ideally you want him to be fit and firing. Not sure if you caught the game between the Knicks and the Heat. Knicks knocked off the Heat quickly, and Grimes provided the spark in this game. Quickly finished with 24. Grimes finished with 23. An important win for the Knicks to cement themselves in that playoff picture. What did you make of it?
Look, I'm not going to lie. I did watch this game because I didn't watch it. But obviously, two teams who are probably in that mid-echelon of Eastern Conference contenders. We got the Knicks. We got the Miami. Shout out Knicks. Rocking that Carmelo Anthony jersey right now as a Lakers fan. But anyway. I think that's a pretty even matchup right there. Look, I'm not going to take too much away from that game because in the best of 7 series, honestly, I don't know who I back, but yeah, I mean, it probably was a playoff-like game. I just didn't actually get the opportunity to check in, but you said the Knicks won.
By 9 points. There was a lot of games on today's schedule, so I didn't expect you to tune into. Yeah, there was a lot. It was a really, but there was a lot of really exciting matchups. Even the ones that were sort of outside of the playoff hunt, I found them very entertaining based off various reasons. I'm going to quickly. Is there any other games that you had that you obviously want to touch on before I sort of go through the rest of them and sort of just give my key takes that I caught from all those games from today?
Oh yeah, well, just real quick, just because you mentioned games that weren't necessarily competing teams. I have to touch on former LA Laker. We're going to call him Talented Horton Tucker because that's what he was today. He had 41 points. Now against the San Antonio Spurs, which obviously, they're in that Victor sweepstakes stage, but 41 points is 41 points, and it's just great to see because this man gets so much, abuse thrown at him, and for him to come out and have 41. And he's been playing some terrific basketball as of recently. So, yeah, it's great to see Taylor shining once again.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And he did it really efficiently too. He shot 60% from the field. So, again, that's a really promising sign that he's not just chucking up shots and getting 40. Anyone can get 40 if they put up 35 shots.
Yeah.
The fact that he did it really efficiently was a big thing. Obviously, a couple more games that I found that were really big in terms of the playoff picture, the play-in picture. The Thunder just getting over the line on a Jalen Williams game winner. And that was a huge win because it puts them one game ahead of the Dallas Mavericks now in that 10th spot.
Huge.
And Jalen Williams came up big in this game, 27, 8, and 6 on 58% from the field. He's now got 10 20-point games in the month of March, and he's come along in leaps and bounds as this season has gone on. Giddy finished with 18, 5, and 7. Did you catch any of this game? Did you see this? Or
Yeah, I did see the game winner. I didn't check into the actual game itself. And But OKC jumping over Dallas is obviously huge. We'll get into the Dallas Mavericks later, but OKC are really exciting. And the fact that they've got Chet to come back to add to that mix, it's pretty scary. Like, Jalen Williams, obviously a diamond in the rough with SGA, and then adding Chet, I think they're going to be a really scary team next season. But that's awesome. Like, I want OKC to succeed, so that's a great win for them.
100%. And he actually, if you look on the on ESPN, when you look at, someone's out with an injury or whatever, they Chet, actually updated Chet's status to questionable, because now that they're in the playoff picture, the playoff hunt again, which would be interesting to see. If imagine he makes his debut come playoff time or play-in time, that would be an incredible sight to see. But I think he probably will hold off until next season. But again, you never know with these things and how they play out. Couple more things just to finalise the recap of the games. We've got KD's return in the Suns game. Marcus, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I didn't see that. It looked like he struggled pretty big time, but look, the Phoenix got the win. A win's a win. They defeated the Timberwolves, which they're fighting for that playoff spot. So, massive win from the Suns, and it just shows, even with KD having a bad shooting night, he only had the 16 points, which for KD standards is pretty bad. But look, they got the win, and KD didn't play too well, it seemed like. So, yeah, huge by Phoenix. And if they can bring that every night, and other guys, they just have that next man up attitude. Obviously, we already know they're already a threat, but it's going to make them that much more of a finals contending threat, I guess, in the West.
100%. And the final point I just want to touch on is congratulations to the Sacramento Kings, who today, with the 40-point victory over the Blazers, secured their first playoff appearance in 16 years. And to go along with that, Keegan Murray has broken the record in today's game for most threes made as a rookie in a single season in NBA history. So that's proven that pick's paid off. There was calls during the draft to say that was the wrong selection. They should have picked Jaden Ivey. Again, they went with what they thought was the right fit for their scheme and for what they thought would help them come playoff time, or to be able to help them contribute to winning basketball, and it's paid off. He's shooting him on a 41% rate. So incredible season from Keegan Murray. And a couple of facts to confirm when the last time the Kings made the playoffs, these are some of the storylines that played out. De'Aaron Fox was only 8 years old. Mike Brown coached the Cavs. Mike Bibby led the Kings in points per game. And Chris Webber was a Sixer. Just to show the level that the Kings were at for so many years, to prove that the last time they made the playoffs, all those different storylines took play. And like you said to me earlier, De'Aaron Fox playing around in the sandpit the last time they were in the playoffs, now leading them to their first playoff appearance in so long. It's a credit to what that franchise has done and been able to turn it around. So I don't know what your take is on that, but I'm really excited to see what they can do in this postseason.
Yeah, I'm not gonna look. I have a weird relationship, me and the Sacramento Kings. Not because I hate them, just because I just know a couple Kings, massive Kings fans, and look, same conference. We get a lot of. I didn't even watch basketball in 2002, but the whole debacle whether the Lakers deserve to be in that finals appearance. But I am kind of happy for the Kings. It's good to see them break that 16-year playoff drought. Hopefully we get a matchup with the Sacramento Kings versus the Lakers and we knock them out in the first round. And but in all seriousness, I love Mike Brown. He's a character. De'Aaron Fox has had a great season. Sabonis, Malik Monk, and it's awesome to see Keegan Murray break that 3-point record as a rookie. So, yeah, I do love the Sacramento Kings team, and I'm happy for their fans.
Yeah, definitely. It's good for basketball. You want to see 100%. These teams that obviously have struggled for years making the playoffs, and you want some parity to be brought back to the league, especially with this era of super teams and guys teaming up. For them to build the way they did, and to obviously they did make a trade to acquire Domantas Sabonis, but for them to be able to build that team mainly through the draft and through free agency acquisitions without it being like any big names trying to like make their way there.
Gotta respect.
That's 100%, definitely. That's all the games recapped now. It was, like I said, a very heavy schedule in the league today, but we'll start to get into our talking points for this particular pod and for the segment that we have ahead. So the first talking point we do have, which is an important one, is obviously the Trailblazers announcing that they shut down Dame for the rest of the season. And I guess the question raised now, or the question to be posed, is where do they go next? Where to next for the Blazers? There was such promise for them at the start of the season. The way they started the season off, the way Dame was playing and how he played throughout the whole year. It's disappointing. So I'd like to hear your take on the situation, Marcus, and where you feel like the Blazers go from here. Do they build around Dame? Even though he wants to stay there, do they send him away, try and put him in a winning situation and rebuild and do a proper rebuild in this situation? What do you think?
My assumption, to jump to conclusion, the Portland Trailblazers, I am a massive fan of this organisation. I love the Trailblazers spirit, I guess, the culture there. But I think Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers, there needs to be a departure there. Personally, I think the Blazers, they've clearly gone the direction where they've gone young. They brought in guys like Cam Reddish. They drafted Shaedon Sharpe. Obviously, the emergence of Anthony Simons is incredible. He's having a terrific season. But then they got guys like Jabari Walker, who I think has real good upside for them, especially in the modern day NBA as a small ball type of power forward center. And Nas Little even, I think he has great potential there. So personally, I think that they should build around a Shaedon Sharpe and Simons backcourt, and then alongside that try to develop Cam Reddish to be the most impactful player he can ultimately be, because he still has plenty to give and he's showing signs. He's showing signs for them, which, I mean, if he's showing signs for them now, just think long-term for next season. Personally, I just think they need way more to compete. I feel bad for Dame, but ultimately, I genuinely rate that call that they've built with those young players. And I've thought for ages, it's just in the best interest for both the Portland Trailblazers and Damian Lillard alike to kind of separate. And yeah, I know Dame Lillard prides himself on staying a Portland Trailblazer, but I think his career will go overlooked if he never really competes again for a championship. And I think that's very likely to happen if he stays a Portland Trailblazer, because to keep it blunt, they suck this season. They haven't been good at all. So yeah, I don't think it's the supporting cast to blame in this situation around Dame, because they are a lot of young players there. And I don't think it's Dame's fault because he's had a career season or the closest thing to a career season. I just think keeping Dame, it hinders these young players' development in Shaedon Sharpe, Simons, and Cam Reddish. So yeah, that's my 2 cents with the Portland Trailblazers.
It's a good take, and it's definitely a fair take for sure.
Yeah.
I guess what I'll touch on is, you mentioned there about it not being obviously the fault of Dame or the supporting cast, because he only had what he had around him. But to me, I feel like the Blazers have let Dame down in a certain extent here, because again, they know they have a superstar talent who arguably has been one of the best performing point guards in this whole league this year, if you look at the advanced stats on it. And they know that they have a guy like this who's obviously in his early 30s and who's had his career best season, and you don't put the pieces around him. I get they struggle to attract free agents because they're a small market team. No one wants to go to Portland. They have to build through the draft. I get that. Obviously, that's why their team is so young. They're like the 8th youngest team in the league. But from my end, I feel like they haven't done enough to try and build the right pieces for him. Again, there's a multitude of factors as to why they couldn't do that. But you need, in my opinion, you should try your utmost to not just put these young pieces around him. If you know you want to, if the intention's to contend and to try and win a finals or try to get to the finals, you need to try everything in your power. Whether it ruins a rebuild for 5 years, at the end of the day, when you have a superstar talent like Dame at your disposal and in your organization, you got to do everything in your power to try and get him a championship. You know what I mean?
100% agree.
And in my opinion, you kind of have to do what the T-Wolves did here in the situation that they had with Kevin Garnett. They respected each other a ton, those two organizations, but I think there was a mutual agreement at the end of it. They let KG go, and they almost encouraged Kevin Garnett to leave and go to the Celtics because they knew that, you know, we're probably not going to be able to attract X, Y, and Z in the free agency or in a trade. And the only way for you to achieve success is elsewhere. And you're too good of a talent to be wasted in a situation where you're not going to be able to perform. Like, what really makes me sad is you don't want to see a guy like Dame, a big-time performer who we've seen prosper in the biggest moments, the buzzer beater against OKC, his buzzer beater against the Rockets. Like, the guys like this are just too good not to be in the playoffs.
Yeah. No, 100%.
And by the time they get to a point where they could build something around him, it's too late. Even with the moves they made, like the whole thing with CJ McCollum, I think they probably should have made that move maybe a couple of seasons ago, extract more value out of CJ, and that could have maybe brought in some pieces that may have helped them contend. You know what I mean? But even I watched Kenny Beecham talk about this, and he threw up the idea of possibly looking at packaging Ant and Shea and seeing what you can try and leverage off them. Obviously, with the way Shaedon Sharpe has played in the last week and a bit, he had 37 and 7 today, mind you, on really inefficient shooting.
Yeah.
Could you put those two young guys in a package and see what you can get to see if you can possibly, if the package is good enough where you think, damn, we could actually contend next year if we can pull something off.
Yeah.
Again, you don't want to really put your whole future on the line to try and win a title, but at the same time, when you have a guy like Dame, superstar talent, has been his superstar his whole career, you kind of sometimes have to consider it. But it'll be interesting, and I'm really excited, but also nervous at the prospects of seeing what the Blazers are going to do going forward. Hopefully, they draft well again and see what they can package up to see how that all plays out. But interesting to see what their next steps will be.
Yeah.
Next topic, Ben Simmons, another guy being shut down. So my question posed to you, Marcus. Has there been a bigger fall from grace in NBA history than what we've seen from Ben Simmons in the last few months? The last few years and last few seasons?
Listen, Ben Simmons, this man right here, coming out of high school, coming out of Montverde, coming out of LSU, I, for one, and I'm sure many others did as well, I thought this man was the second coming of Magic Johnson. I'm not even going to lie. Ben Simmons, where do I even begin? Look, since departing from Philly, he hasn't really been healthy, and he also has been healthy, you could make the case, but obviously he has those back issues. His disc is just, I don't even know, it's smashed to pieces, it's messed up, it's destroyed. He's lost some explosiveness, you can tell, when he plays, you know, going up for rebounds, going up for dunks, tough finishes. He almost avoids contact nowadays, which, hey, that's not the Ben Simmons we knew in his rookie season or his sophomore season. But I think, to be honest, I think that he genuinely does need to sit out. Like, I believe, who wouldn't believe him? Like, he does have back issues, but will he suit up for the Brooklyn Nets ever again? I don't know. I don't know if he ever will. I don't think he will. But I also don't think anyone is willing to take that contract. They're not willing to trade for that contract next season. And I think Ben Simmons, it's tough to say because I do like the guy, but I think he gets bought out. And hopefully he finds himself a good home where he can kind of revive the second half of his career. And who knows, he might never be the player that he once was, but if he can even be a little bit better than half of the player that he once was, he can contribute to a championship team. So, yeah, I don't really like the whole thing with tearing our fellow Aussie down in Ben Simmons. I know he hasn't suited up for Australia when he kind of should have had, but yeah, who
who knows? Maybe one day we can see Ben playing next to Giddey and Chet in OKC. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
What about you?
Let me know your thoughts.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think you make a great point. Like, I don't like tearing down players, and I don't like bringing players down, just to get a bit of clicks on YouTube or, on social media. You know what I mean? I'm all about just giving my opinion, but making sure it's factual and making sure it's, fair and reasonable.
Wait, can I chip in real quick?
I was a big... Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong here. Ben Simmons, even as a fan, I can admit he's not all in the right necessarily. He's had his petty instances in the past, where he hasn't really been as professional as he should have. We saw that last year when he was departing from Philadelphia. But, I didn't really mean all on Ben's side, but at the same time, I think he doesn't really get a lot of leeway, if that makes sense. Like, it's kind of all attack on Ben Simmons. But, that's literally it.
100%. Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you on that front. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's been instances on both parties, like on both sides, where you could obviously argue the case and say, like, there's faults on both fronts. But where I feel like Ben Simmons, has gone downhill, and where I feel like, yes, some stuff was out of his control. For me, it's like, you've got all the God-given talent. You're 6'10", 6'11", whatever you may be. Yeah. You're 240 pounds, 110, 15 kilos. You can run down the court quicker than most point guards. You've got athleticism. You've got the God-given gift of being able to pass the basketball and the feel for the game. It was all there. And for me, when you know that you've got a certain thing in your game that you need to work on, especially in this situation where his jump shot, again, the NBA changed the style of game. You need to be able to at least be a somewhat competitive somewhat a confident enough shooter from three. Look at guys like Giannis. They're not elite shooters, but they still don't shy away from taking it. Where I get frustrated is Lonzo Ball reconstructed his whole jump shot after all the criticism that was put forward to him, all of the, issues surrounding his jump shot, and he still worked on it, reconstructed it, and took it to a next level. What bothers me about Ben Simmons is all this criticism came to him, and instead of taking it and saying, like, I'm going to prove people wrong, I'm going to prove that I can actually, make changes to my game or adapt it, do this, do that, he just outright refused to. And even if you shoot the ball, no one's going to think badly of you.
Exactly.
You're not going to be embarrassed for doing it. But the fact that you aren't even willing to take a jump shot, and then not only that, but you have in one part of this season, he had more fouls than he had points.
Yeah.
It's like we're talking about Ben Simmons here, a generational talent who was compared to LeBron James, who was compared to Magic Johnson, who was the Gatorade National Player of the Year coming out of high school. He was arguably the college player of the year in that year that he came out in the draft, and all those question marks about who should have been picked first, Brandon Ingram or Ben Simmons. I actually said, I think Brandon Ingram's a better pick in this situation. I got a few people that I used to, when I first said that claim or made that statement, actually laughed and said, "Oh, you get proven wrong." And then I was in this NBA forum, and I went back to those receipts, and I said, "You know what? Like, look at that. Now I'm actually right and you're wrong." So again, pretty much. And to be honest, like, again, I want Ben Simmons to succeed. I wish him all the best, but at the end of the day, you brought this upon yourself to some extent because you're not willing to work on your game. You want all the glitz, the glamour that comes with the game. You got your $170 million contract over 5 years. They're paying you $30+ million, whatever it may be. And you're not willing to improve your game. You're comfortable. You're satisfied. I don't want to comment on the mental health stuff. I don't want to comment on the back stuff because I don't know the full situation. And I trust that what has come along with that stuff, it's all legitimate. But again, I can't go into too much detail outside of him not working on his individual game that could have made him a better player. So I hope he turns it around. But, it's going to be tough to find a suitor now with the way this whole situation's played out. And the funny thing is, Marcus, the Sixers were laughed at for giving him up and, taking on James Harden and saying that was a risk and whatever, you know what I mean? The Nets are like, oh, we got the better end of the deal. And all of a sudden you look at it and now the Sixers are competing for one of the top seeds in the East. They've got James Harden firing on all cylinders again.
Ben's not
None of the
playing.
Nets players, correct, and Ben's not playing. None of the Nets that were around at the time in that dynamic trio of Durant, Kyrie, and Harden, none of them are even in that organization anymore. So they've been completely fleeced. It's almost as bad of a fleece as when Paul Pierce, Garnett, and who else was it? There was another player, Jason Terry, went from the Celtics to the Nets. So it's going to be interesting to see how this next year and a bit plays out for Ben Simmons. I wish him all the best, but the chances of him turning it around, it's going to be an uphill battle. So
I
100%
completely agree. I'll just quickly touch note, but like I completely agree. Kind of the NBA's golden boy, to be honest. Like I'm going to keep it blank, but comes out of college. LSU barely plays for the number one pick. Gatorade played the year in high school. Comes to the NBA. Obviously, he's a real talent, rookie of the year. But then, you said never works on his game, which, he hasn't really progressed all that much. And the fact that he hasn't stringed together a jump shot or just refuses to shoot is pretty horrid. So, I'll probably...
Final point before we go on to the next topic. I just want to touch on... There was one point in time when Luka first came into the league and when he started dominating in his rookie season, there was actually comparisons made between...
Luka and Ben.
Who is a better player, Luka or Ben?
Right.
And we were like... There was genuine arguments to sometimes make the case for Ben Simmons because of his defensive abilities. Yes, he wasn't as productive with the shot making like Luka was, but he had other assets to his game. But now, if you made that comparison a couple of seasons later, and if someone had asked you,
laughing.
Who would you prefer? You would not believe that the conversation would be completely shut away and shut off from even being brought into existence because of how bad Ben Simmons is playing. So for me, that's just a crazy turn of events. And I just wanted to add that in because it just came to me. I was like, you know what? We were comparing those two guys at one point, and now we're like, they're in completely different realms.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, the amount of comparisons you got for Ben. Obviously, you had the Ingram, Luka Doncic, Ben Simmons, Cole Anthony Towns, which, I don't know, cat's cat, like he's solid. But it's just crazy to think that, like, everybody would have thought Ben Simmons by now would be contending for, like, MVP, maybe not having
All NBA,
all defense, maybe a defensive player of the year, but instead, like, he potentially, like, it's a real possibility he gets bought out by the Nets. I don't know if this will make the pod, but like we saw that even Jock Vaughn, like he wasn't too happy with Ben sitting out with those back injuries. So who knows if that's even legit? But anyway, I think that's enough for Ben Simmons because I've kind of protected him and then I've kind of just insulted him. But
flip the switch and attacked him.
It's just a whirlwind with him. Like it's so hard to kind of get an understanding of the guy.
100%. Speaking of the guy we just mentioned, Luka Doncic, I guess a point now, our next segment is, talking about the Mavs' chances of making the playoffs, or even the play-in, to be honest. Let's not even discuss the playoffs. Are they even going to make the play-in? Which, again, this is another fall from grace. Like, Western Conference Finals with a lesser supporting cast, you could say, obviously, adding Kyrie Irving, you think having those two as a duo, you'd automatically be contending for a top seed in the West and, being nearly favourite for the Western Conference, and it's just been a very rough ride. 4-9 as a duo, no cohesiveness in that team. They lost their identity defensively when they traded Dorian Finney-Smith. Some of Kidd's rotations have been questionable. To me, I don't understand how Powell still starts. You couldn't hurt playing JaVale more minutes with his length and athleticism. Again, you got a guy with such a defensive presence, and
Luka.
He's got that rim running ability. You put it anywhere near the rim, he's gonna finish it. And you don't really need a shot maker like JaVale. If you're gonna play Dwight Powell, who doesn't really have an extended offensive game and the ability to hit a jump shot, you don't really need to have another jump shooting center. So why not throw JaVale in? I saw he played 3 minutes today against the Sixers, or minutes, whatever it was. Might have been slightly more, but I just didn't understand the logic with some of his rotations. Even at times, they took Josh Green out of the lineup after Josh Green was prospering, and then you're playing him 6-7 minutes. I get certain matchups, certain nights, you're going to have different, a different depth chart. You're going to have different lineups going. You're trying to find that balance. But I just, from what Kidd was last year as a coach and how good their defensive identity was, I know that they don't have the same level of defenders on their squad this season, but to me, he just made some very questionable choices. And what stat shocked me the most, Marcus, was that in the season this year, considering how good of a passer Luka Doncic is and even Kyrie Irving can get it going, they're only 28th in assists per game, which really surprised me.
To be honest,
and to me, I don't know if that...
Yeah, I'm not too surprised, to be honest, because, like, Luka, although, like, they're both very on ball, you know what I mean? Like, maybe they might make the occasional, like, swing, but for the most part, like, Kyrie can obviously play off the ball, but Luka, I don't know, like, you kind of need to build a team around him, like LeBron or like a Kobe in the later parts of his career. Like, I don't see him ever really playing off the ball, so I'm not too surprised by that, to be honest.
I'd almost try and have a similar setup. I don't know whether you win a championship, but almost have a similar setup to how the Rockets had it with prime James Harden, where they had basically four shooters. You had Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson. I'm trying to think who else was on that squad, Gordon. And then have have a guy who can be a defensive rim protector at your center spot, who can catch lobs, who can really be athletic and grab offensive rebounds from the misses that the shooters from the shots the shooters take. Again, whether that wins you a championship, I still think you'll get more out of that and get the best out of Luka in those situations than you would with the current lineup and the way they have another on-ball dominant player like Kyrie. I'll add in a few more stats before I get your take on this. So, since Kyrie joined the Mavs, they're 7-10. Kyrie in that time is averaging 26 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.2 steals, and he has shooting splits of 49.8%, 39% from 3, and 94% from the free throw line. And if you look at the stats offensively, they've actually gotten better statistically as a group on the offensive side of the ball since the trade. When he and Kyrie have played together, Luka's stats have actually taken a dip. He's gone to 30.5 points a game, 8.5 rebounds, 7.1 assists, 3.8 turnovers a game, and his shooting splits have gone slightly down from so it's 47%, 34.7 from 3, 79.3% from the free throw line. So I feel like Kyrie, you chuck him into any situation, I feel like he can adapt. And if you look at it, they're 4-9 as a duo, 7-10 since Kyrie joined. So when Kyrie and Luka didn't play and Kyrie was just on his own, they actually had a winning record when Kyrie was the main guy on that Mavs team. So again, you could say, is Luka the problem? Because Luka really needs to change his game and really work on his off-ball stuff, because yes, we know how dominant he can be on ball, but we want to see that side of Luka where, like, when he doesn't have the ball, is he moving? You look at guys like Steph Curry and those really elite scorers. When they don't have the ball, they're still moving around. You look at guys like Clay, it only takes him 8 dribbles to hit 60 points. I know they're two different players. I completely understand that. But I love Luka and he's one of my favorite players, but I know that if he really wants to take the next step and he wants to win MVPs, if he wants to take his team to the number 1 seed and to ultimately win a chip, he kind of needs to add different facets to the game that he doesn't have at the moment. And whether that means improving his conditioning. I know every year we say, oh, he looks like he's improved his conditioning, but he gets to a certain point in the year and he burnt out, or he looks like he's put on weight again. Like, I don't understand it, and it's not a personal attack on Luka. I'm his biggest stan, but at the same time, being his biggest stan, I feel like I have the right to maybe, then be his harshest critic at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It'll be interesting to see what they do, and I honestly feel like a lot of this trade pressure the fact that the trade actually took place was pressure from the fans of Dallas when they put that painting up in the city of Dallas, and they ended up having that mural where it said Luka needs help, and then Mark Cuban made this audacious move to get Kyrie, knowing that there was some baggage there, knowing that there was those underlying issues with Kyrie. Again, Kyrie's performed, and I think he's maintained that level that he had throughout his whole career. But it's just, again, how they work going forward, whether Kyrie stays there long term, I don't believe he will. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm hoping they make the playoffs, and I'm hoping that they can turn things around and eventually get the franchise and get this team set up in a way which can maximize the talents of guys like Luka and Kyrie, or whoever does decide to join Luka on the journey going forward. And whether even Luka decides to stay there long term, that's a big question mark.
No.
What do you think, Marcus?
100%. Dallas finding themselves out of the play-in is absolutely ridiculous. Like, growing up, Kyrie Irving, like, him and Kobe Bryant earlier on, but kind of in the earlier high school stages, I was all Kyrie Irving, like, massive Kyrie fan. But I've come to the conclusion that after leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's kind of hard to say this, but is Kyrie, like, is he a pit stop to these organisations? He kind of goes there, drops off, they kind of decline a little bit, but then he leaves and they get better. Like, we saw it with the Celtics. We're kind of seeing this with the Nets, with the new type of era that they're actually having with Mikal, Cam, Nick Claxton, who knows, maybe even Cam Thomas. Like, I really do think that Kyrie Irving not staying with these organisations long term has kind of hindered his career, and ultimately teams don't really look at him as the same. Although he's one of the best talents out there in the league, like, the question whether he'll stay there long term affects how long his contract will actually be. So I don't know. I'm glad they made the bold move, obviously, to bring Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks. I think they had to make that move because look, like Luka Doncic, he wanted help, he got help. They lost guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, who they drafted and developed into these ultimately, like, the perfect role players. But I don't know, Dallas Mavericks, like, everyone's frustrated right now. Luka's complaining about his loss of love for the game. Kyrie and Luka are getting there still. Obviously, you mentioned Kyrie maybe more so than Luka, even though Luka's still performing to quite a high level, just not as much as prior to when they had Kyrie. But I really just think the Mavericks need to focus long term on how they can complement Luka Doncic. And for example, you used the Rockets, which I thought was a great example to use, by the way, but also like the 2009-10 or 2008-9 Lakers. I don't want to harp on the Lakers too much, but when Kobe was struggling to get those championships, afterwards, when he had Shaq on his team, they brought in guys like Lamar Odom, guys like Ron Artest, Pau Gasol, Andrew Bynum they drafted. The list goes on. But yeah, Kyrie with Luka, to me, it's like bringing Allen Iverson to play with Kobe. Like, two alphas.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds cool on paper, but ultimately long term, how can these two players like work together to compete for a championship over teams like Phoenix, Golden State, Memphis? Like, the West is obviously stacked, so I don't really know how I feel about Dallas. I don't really rate them as contenders, but at the same time, I'm happy they got Kyrie Irving because they kind of had to have a chance at a title. So that's my stance on Dallas. But yeah, they kind of suck, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, they're probably one of the biggest disappointments of this season, to be honest. And I guess we might break that down in a separate video, maybe next week or in a couple of weeks. Obviously, once the season ends, we'll talk about who we felt like was the biggest disappointments, both from a player perspective and from a team perspective, and I guess sort of break it down a bit more. But really good takes. I think, it'd be interesting to see how their future plays out, and hopefully they can turn it around, because I think Luka and Dallas, they sort of go hand in hand, you know what I mean? And you kind of, it'd be weird seeing him in a different organisation, but hopefully they can turn it around and, build the right team around him and see how things play out. So we'll move on to the next topic. So again, talking about pressure and talking about players and teams that are under the pump. who do you feel is under the most pressure heading into the postseason? You can list both your teams and your players. They don't have to be from the same team. They don't have to be from the same organization. We don't have to have the same agreement here, obviously. So I guess I'll let you take it away, Marcus. Let me know who you have as your players and teams under the most pressure.
So I'll keep this one pretty short and sweet. But teams under the pump come playoff time for me. I'll give a little bit of an explanation, but not too much. So for teams, I have the Miami Heat. Reason being, they've made the finals in 2020, but they haven't really been able to get back to that form that they had. And Tyler Hero obviously is a young prospect, and Bam Adebayo's great, but Jimmy's kind of getting old. And I don't really know if they have the team to compete in the East. In fact, I don't think they do. So I think they're under the pump. I got the Nuggets under the pump because, we've seen the amount of first, second round exits that Nikola Jokic has had, and he has Jamal Murray and Michael Porter back. So I rate Denver, but I know a lot of people might necessarily think that they're pretenders. I'm not going to lie. Specifically, Philadelphia fans, with the whole Joel, blah, blah, blah. Can we just appreciate both for once, please? Nikola and Embiid,
100%.
both great. But the next team is actually Philadelphia. Look, you got Joel Embiid, potential MVP, likely MVP. Then you got James Harden, who the reason they're under the pump is because of health reasons. Look, Harden and Embiid, they don't have a great track record in the playoffs of being healthy. So if they can't stay healthy this year and they don't reach the Eastern Conference Finals, I'll say, I think they could be under the pump. I think Harden might not be a Sixer. I think they could be under the pump. And my next team and final team is the Atlanta Hawks. Look, they might sneak into the playoffs, but the DeJounte Murray acquisition, he's been playing great, but I don't know if the fit's great next to Trae Young. I don't know who's the real alpha on that team. I don't know if they can coexist well. John Collins has obviously dropped off. He should be traded, I think, in the offseason, or if he's a free agent, I think he should leave. And talking about Dallas before, I think that could be a good fit next to Luka as a pick and roll partner. And I like that. I rate him over, bloody Dwight Powell, who I don't rate him at all. So I think John...
How is he still a starting center? We'll never know.
Exactly. How's he... Yeah, exactly. I think John Collins is double the player that Dwight is and Dwight Powell. And, the fact that this John Collins guy, he averaged like 20 and 10 not too long ago. So he could easily, he's still a valuable asset. So anyway, enough with John Collins. I love him, but we got to move on. So my players, Harden, Embiid, Trae Young, and then one last one, Russell Westbrook. He played great today. If he brings it every night, you don't have to worry about it. But if he underperforms in the playoffs and he's to blame, which I'm not one to kind of blame Russell Westbrook, but say he plays horrific in the playoffs and the Clippers get eliminated in a 7-game series to the, who knows, any team that's worse than, for example, Dallas or something, I think Westbrook could be under the pump because, fit-wise, who's going to be willing to take him on? Is he a starter? Is he a bench player? We don't really know. So that's my teams and players also who I think are under the pump.
Fair assessment. I like it. You weren't too full on with it, but I think the analysis was good there. For me personally, just touching on that whole John Collins thing, I want to know how many off seasons and trade rumors.
Oh my God,
we've heard with
how long
John
do we
Collins,
have to wait?
And the fact that he's still there, it just blows my mind. So
it's
I just
funny though.
Yeah, it is, and I think you made a fair point there with obviously the Atlanta Hawks. I think getting a coach like Quinn Snyder, even though obviously Nate McMillan helped take them to the conference finals a few years ago, I don't think they should have been there in the first place if Ben makes that dunk. But again, with Quinn Snyder's experience in the playoffs, he didn't take him to any particular promised land or anything like that, but I do think he has that coaching experience, and I think hopefully if they do sneak in, he can maybe provide that spark defensively, especially in the playoffs when the game slows down a bit. He's obviously a defensive-minded coach, so that might make the difference. But again, not knowing who the alpha is on that team, and DeJounte having a bit of an ego personality, and them giving up all those picks for DeJounte, they are under a bit of pressure in my opinion. But they're not. It's not one of the teams I've listed. But again, obviously it is a fair call to make. For me, I think the team that's under the most pressure is really the Phoenix Suns. You look at how many players they gave up to acquire Kevin Durant, and obviously since that trade, you look at what Mikal Bridges has put up in terms of productivity. In his 21 games for the Nets in his career, he's averaging 26.8 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 2.7 assists. I don't have his shooting splits, but again, knowing the way Mikal Bridges is as a player, he'd be pretty efficient. And if you were to take the most points per game by a Nets player of all time, even though it's a small sample size, he's actually third on that list for a career points per game as a Nets player. So KD's on top at 29, Kyrie's at second at 27.1, and Bridges only just misses out on second spot. So again, that could turn out to bite them in the arse. And you saw Cam Johnson, I know it was against the Rockets, but he had 31, 7, and 5 on 61% shooting. And again, guys like that can shoot the ball and that can be pests on the defensive side as well. And the fact that you gave up so many picks through the entire house at the Nets to acquire Kevin Durant, it could turn out to bite them in the arse. And obviously with the fact that now Chris Paul has less pressure on him in terms of having to produce the way he did in the previous playoff appearances, now that you have KD to take up the brunt of that scoring load, I think that puts more pressure on him as well. So I think he's one of the players that's under pressure, and KD as well. I could put Devin Booker in that sense as well, but again, he has delivered to an extent, and he in the playoffs, we saw what he could do on the big stage, and I don't think he really let that team down more than Chris Paul did last playoff series or last playoff appearance that they had. So I think him and Chris Paul and KD are the two players from the Suns that I think are under the pump. Nuggets are one of the other teams that I have, and to go with that, Nikola Jokic, again, not more so from myself, but I just know that the media is going to scrutinize him heavily, especially the fact that he could possibly win his third MVP, and all three of them would be back-to-back-to-back. And so again, if you don't perform now after you get named MVP and you have another first, second round exit like you mentioned, I don't think it's going to bode well with the narrative surrounding Nikola Jokic. And I think, like you said, in previous years we could sort of let him get away with it a bit because, again, he didn't have Michael Porter Jr. healthy, and then last year he didn't have Jamal Murray healthy. So he hasn't had that, and he didn't have Aaron Gordon in the previous series either. So again, you got guys like that, Bruce Brown, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who've had experience in big stages. Again, he has a really deep bench now and a good supporting cast to help him through this playoff run. So if he doesn't have success, I think they're going to come down hard on him. And I love Jokic. I'm Serbian, so again, I'm a big stan as I am with Luka Doncic. But I think they're going to come down heavily on him if he doesn't perform. So I'm hoping he does play well, but he's under a bit of pressure. Like you mentioned, the Sixers are under the pump. James Harden, Joel Embiid, previous playoff failures haven't really reached the levels that guys like that leading teams should reach. And so I think they're under the pump, and I think you mentioned this in the last podcast we had, they might even have to completely rebuild their whole team if they don't have the success that they want in this playoff series. You won't see the same personnel a part of the Sixers next season, so that'll be interesting. And the last team I have, so I got two more teams. I got the Clippers. Obviously, since Kawhi and PG were acquired, they haven't had the success that they've wanted, and the plan that Steve Ballmer had in place when he brought them there, hasn't come to fruition. Now you've brought Westbrook into the picture. PG's health's going to come into play as to whether they have the success that they want. But I think that whole trio you could consider them that they're under pressure heading into the postseason. And whether this is a question mark, whether they make it or not.
Big time.
Dallas, I think, is under the pump. heading into the postseason because, again, especially Luka and Kyrie, again, that whole thing of how they perform, if they do make the playoffs, play in, etc., if they don't perform, that could mean the difference between them being a duo next season or completely just getting rid of that entire experiment and starting from scratch again and eventuating to Kyrie ending up on a new team. So you could say that's probably my list of players and teams that are probably the highest, have the highest pressure mounted on them. But you could make a case for a lot of different teams and a lot of different players. But I think the way that these guys have been talked about in the media, you could probably say that they're under the most pressure and under the pump the most out of the entire
all completely valid
teams going into
Forgot about Dallas.
Season.
Obviously, that's a huge one, but completely. Yeah.
I mean, we sort of touched on them in the last segment anyway, so we kind of kind of know what to expect from them in terms of the pressure that's mounted on them anyway. So I didn't really want to add them in, but I thought I had to at least.
Are we talking about Dillon Brooks?
Yes, Dillon Brooks. So has he become the NBA's most hated player? I think we sort of know the answer to this, but I wanted to get your take on it and see what you think of him and I guess what your stance on his whole antics and his behaviour on court is. And I'd love to hear what you have to say about this.
Dillon Brooks. Nobody likes Dillon. Like, let's be honest. Nobody likes Dillon. No NBA players besides players on the Grizzlies like Dillon. But personally, I don't know. I secretly kind of love Dillon Brooks. Like, it sounds bad. Maybe I don't love him, but I think he's great. I think he's great for the NBA. I like how he kind of plays that villain role, I guess. Now, he does way too much, don't get me wrong. Like, some of the antics I think are just like, some of them, like, let's be honest, they are pretty funny, but to an extent, it's like, sometimes I'm watching the Grizzlies play and I'm like, can this guy just play the game? Like, can he just play basketball instead of, running around, going 0 for 6 from 3 and just, like, locking up Paul George for one play, literally one possession and talking shit. Like, to me, that makes zero sense. But I think it's pretty funny. Like, some of the quotes he kind of says, they do make me laugh. Like the one with Draymond where it's like, your podcast is cute or whatever. He thought that was a good insult. And then you got the Russell Westbrook going up to the Memphis bench today. I thought that was hilarious. Like, Russ doing Russ things. Like, I don't even know what he was saying, but you can get a gist that he's going like, oh, why are you talking now? Or whatever he would be saying along those lines. Yeah, I think it's great for the game. And then the whole Klay Thompson thing where he's holding the 5 rings. Like, it's entertaining, I'm not going to lie. So, Dillon Brooks being a villain, it's good for the NBA. It's honestly funny, I think. And come playoff time, it's getting me pumped just talking about Dillon Brooks and the playoffs. And I would never have thought, because it's not like he's a star in the league. Like, this guy's the equivalent of like Deshaun Stevenson or something. But I don't know. Memphis, I don't love them, but I look forward to watching them, and I look forward to watching Dillon Brooks, and the Memphis squad.
100%. Yeah, just touching on that, I think, in every good movie or any good, storyline, there's always a villain and someone has to play that role. And I think without it, you don't really get that excitement factor out of that movie you're watching or that book you're reading or, that TV show you're tuned into. And obviously the script writers of the NBA have done an amazing job. They've provided Dillon Brooks. He was cast successfully as the villain. And,
it's so good. It's so good.
No, I really enjoy it, honestly. Like, as much as I hate him, and I hate when guys who are sort of average players talk a lot of shit, especially Draymond Green. I know he's justified. He's won Defensive Player of the Year, and he's been
he does talk way
part of that whole dynasty that the Warriors put forward. But a guy like him, like, you shouldn't be talking shit to guys that are like 10 times the ball player you are. I know the value that Draymond provides, and it's not all about scoring. It's not all about doing the X, Y, and Z on the court. But sometimes there's a ton.
Get what you mean.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, going back to that whole thing about how he mentioned, that podcast. All he does is talk on his podcast, whatever it was. it's funny because in the pre-draft when they asked him who he would like to be,
yeah,
he said he wanted to be a Draymond Green type player. So it's like you're kind of contradicting yourself. You're bagging out Draymond, but then you kind of
planned it.
Yeah, he probably had it in his head the whole time, like that was something that he would come back
it's
to.
A screw.
But the crazy thing about Dillon Brooks is he's lost $248,242 this year in fines alone. He pushed the cameraman over, which resulted in one of those fines. He talks a lot of shit on the bench. And you know what he said about losing all that money to the fines? He goes, it's just paper. Like, that you can't... he just some of the idiotic stuff that he has to say, like, don't get me wrong, like I said, I think it really adds excitement to the league. Yeah. But I think you see a lot of... Yeah, I know. Dillon Brooks, obviously. But what I think enjoy about the whole persona that Dillon Brooks puts forward is the fact that, it takes away it's a lot different to how the NBA is at the moment with, these guys being like, it's like a brotherhood, everyone after the games all hugging each other, dapping each other up and all this sort of stuff. It's like, you know what? Yeah. You need a guy like that to kind of say like, no, I don't want to be bros with you. I don't want to be your homie outside the court. My homies are my 15 men on this squad, on the Grizzlies squad, and everyone else I don't see as someone that I want to partake in having that brotherhood. You know what I mean? We're out here to fight. We're out here to win for a championship. So I can respect him on that level, and I know I like the competitive side of him. But I think it's hard to say that he's not the most hated player at the moment. So. Yeah, it'll be interesting come playoffs. I'm really excited to see the matchups and all the shit talking continue.
Yeah. Just touched on that real quick. You mentioned like my brother's on my 15 man, not the opposition type thing. The thing is like, I don't want to protect Dillon Brooks, but you got guys like Charles Barkley, I don't know, Isaiah Thomas, Shaq, whoever it is, kind of talking about Dillon Brooks and his antics and that. But back when they played, like, you can't tell me it probably wasn't the same. Like, you got dudes like, I'm sure the bad boy Pistons weren't, buddy with the Chicago Bulls. Like, I do rate that, and I don't think that necessarily players in the 80s, maybe even 90s even, should be kind of commenting on, like, what he said about LeBron or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, no hard feelings. Like obviously he said what he said. It's not right, not necessarily justified, but like he's just there to stir the pot, really. Like I don't know. He obviously doesn't have the best intent at all times, but I don't think he's the worst. I don't think he'd be the worst bloke.
I think Isaiah Thomas, like, if he said anything, I didn't hear the comments, so I don't want to go into detail about it. But
No, I just named.
Yeah. But even like guys like you see like how petty Isaiah Thomas was, wouldn't shake Jordan's hand. I know they have like bigger beef than just obviously on court stuff. I get that. It's like off court as well. But like him not shaking the hands of guys after they got eliminated, like you can't say that these old timers don't want to see this kind of stuff, because that's literally what their whole NBA was about. You know what I mean? And
bro, they asked for it.
100%.
They literally want it. Yeah, they asked for this. But anyway, that's just. Yeah.
We got a few topics left, so we'll try and motor through these last few. I'm not sure if you saw the comments that Andre Drummond, or the statement that Andre Drummond released relating to his mental health. He's taken a break from social media and he'll be focusing on his mental health. He wrote, he's like, if you two are struggling with your mental health, you're not alone. It's okay to ask for help. What's your take on this? I've got my opinion on it, and I'm going to share that in a second. But what did you think of the comments that Andre Drummond made, and taking the hiatus away from social media? Obviously, there's a lot of talk in the NBA media. There's a lot of different NBA media outlets that do make comments. What do you think of his decision to step away from social media, and do you think it's the right decision for him?
I've really had some time to think about this now. At the start, I kind of had a different opinion, but now, kind of thinking about it, I think, look, at the end of the day, for Drummond or whoever's going through it, I know DeMar had some, Kevin Love, DeMar had those
they were kind of the first ones to really, I guess, pioneer the mental health in the Players Association. But yeah, like things are bigger than basketball, I think. For Drummond, to me, it's quite stupid the amount of backlash players kind of get in the NBA from the media.
For sure.
Simply just because of a game like basketball. Like, they play a bad game. I don't know, like all of a sudden they're a bad teammate or something. Like they're having beef with the coach, this and that. Like, I do see how, in terms of being a basketball player, can take a toll on you mentally. I don't know Drummond's circumstances, if it's family reasons or basketball reasons, but yeah, like guys like...
They are human at the end of the day. I guess it's, we forget about that.
Yeah.
They are getting these multi-million-dollar deals, but I think at the end of the day, they are just human beings at the end of the day. They're, like you said,
they're just like us.
Yeah, for sure.
Wait, I'll just quit, just real quick. Like, I guess, I don't know if this is, like, mental health. I don't know if this really relates to Drummond's mental health, but I just have to quickly acknowledge, like, guys like Draymond, Paul George, JJ Redick, guys who are kind of pioneering into the NBA media, I guess, doing their podcasts and giving players a voice. I think that's also, that could influence a player's mental health, instead of going out there in a press conference, that they're to do it with their buddy and a player who's gone through the exact same stuff. So I just have to shout out those guys. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, you made really good points, and I think it's a big step that we're taking where, even guys that are currently in the NBA getting asked to go on, certain shows, whether it's, ex-NBA players having their own podcasts, like the guys like Quentin Richardson, Derek Smiles on Knuckleheads, and All the Smoke with Matt Barnes, Stephen Jackson, being able to express themselves, talk about, their feelings and talk about their stories, be in a comfortable forum where they know that, these guys went through the same thing like I did, and, being able to share that, I think that's really important. I think it should be a big step that the NBA does take going forward in the future regarding how the media is portrayed. I get a lot of these networks like ESPN, they get clicks off hot takes and off, controversial sort of opinions. But they don't realize the negative connotations it can have on players and the effects it can have on guys. Again, they are human beings after all. They're getting massive contracts, and yes, with massive contracts, massive amounts of money comes massive amounts of pressure. And it's the same as any job. If you're getting paid the amount of money that these guys are getting to put a ball in the hoop and to dribble the ball out on the court, you should expect some criticism if you're not performing, like a la Ben Simmons, how we spoke about earlier. You know what I mean? I get that, and I understand that there's mental health impacts that can come from all of that stuff. But for me personally, at the end of the day, you look at guys like Nikola Jokic, doesn't have social media. He sort of is a bit of a hermit outside of the whole, media scene and, expressing yourself and showing off all the lavish things you have in your life. I think it probably plays into his favor and why he plays better basketball, because he doesn't have constantly scrolling through Instagram, seeing what people have to say about him, commenting like, well, are they saying something about his weight? Are they saying something about the way he plays? Are the Philly fans in his comments because he's a favorite to win MVP over Embiid, and they're salty about it, like things like that. It's so
stupid.
It is, but I think sometimes it's the best thing for players not to have social media. I get some of these guys require it because they get more marketability out of it. They get more endorsement deals, and a lot of these guys aren't on the money that Nikola Jokic is on an NBA contract perspective. So they need to find ways, again, to be able to market their name, their image, their likeness, to be able to make some money from it. And some guys just like expressing themselves. That's just their personality. At the end of the day, so be it. Do as you may. But I guess you got to take the good with the bad. If you're going to express yourself in a certain way, or if you're going to perform poorly in a certain way when you've got the money that you are being given, and you got the pressure to perform, you kind of have to. If you're in the spotlight, you gotta be able to take the good with the bad. But again, I think sometimes the abuse on social media, and again, I don't know if it's purely social media driven or if there's something else in his life. Mental health can affect many people in different ways. I think we've all gone through it to some extent, some circumstances, but you sort of just got to take the good with the bad in this sort of instance. And I think he's done the right thing to step away and just sort of just work on himself and take away all the distractions of being an NBA player and being in the spotlight 24/7 when you are playing for such a high-profile franchise like the Bulls and being a well-known player like Andre Drummond is. So we don't know the full extent of it, but I think you got to take the good with the bad there. But we wish him all the best. Hopefully, it's not a long
100%.
Time out of the game, but we'll just have to wait and see. And like I said, best wishes to Andre Drummond. So next topic, we've got the NBA union deal with Adam Silver, hopeful of the deal being able to be made ahead of the Friday deadline for the new collective bargaining agreement, which will run through which will begin at the end of the 2023-24 season. So the current collective bargaining agreement took effect on July 1st of 2017, and there's potential for an opt-out. So there was deadlines earlier. So in December 15th and February 6th, the NBA and the NBAPA have twice extended that agreement. Basically, the proposals in place are for certain, parts of this collective bargaining agreement to be made, which includes the one and done rule for the high school players to be able to come out of high school straight to the pros like it used to be done. There'll be talks of possibly, the luxury tax system being replaced with the hard salary cap, which would affect teams like, the Golden State Warriors, for example, that spent nearly $350 million in salary and luxury tax last season en route to winning the NBA championship. The salary cap last season was $112.4 million, and they're spending about $360 million this season, which is nearly 4 times as much as the Spurs and the Grizzlies. So again, that will affect teams at the top of the NBA, food chain, as you could say, and it'll provide a bit more parity. But again, some of the teams aren't happy with this, and there's disagreements on a lot of fronts from both the NBA and the NBA Players Association. So this is going to be interesting because, again, if terms aren't agreed to by the Friday deadline, which they're positive it will take place, but there are obviously concerns that, if they don't reach it by that deadline, then they could opt out of the current collective bargaining agreement effective June 30th, which would mean that if that was to take place, then there could be a lockout for the first time since 2011, as we may remember. That forced the NBA to miss the first 16 games of the season, and it was only a 66-game regular season schedule. So fingers crossed that they can reach terms and reach an agreement on this, because again, we want to see NBA basketball being played. We want to see fairness on both, the NBA standpoint, and from a player's perspective, we want to make sure, the money that is being brought into the league through the revenue generation is evenly distributed. At the end of the day, the players are the ones who are out on the court, who are performing on the big stage, and who are bringing in the fans and the viewership. But at the same time, the NBA is doing the jobs that they need to in terms of providing the ad revenue, the sponsorships, that global reach to different countries around the world. So we want it to be fair from a standpoint from all parties concerned. But at the same time, I think there's got to be certain rules in play that take a little bit of the power away from the players. And one of those being that, they're wanting to add in a minimum games played for any major awards going forward next year, so that, it stops this load management kind of thing, and it stops this whole player empowerment. To be honest, I want it to be fair on, like I said, on every side. But I think it's getting a little bit overboard with the player empowerment, and you can even touch on how the whole situation with Ja Morant and his suspension. I know there wasn't things proven, but again, I think that in itself was an example of the players having so much more, control over situations now than they used to. If in Gilbert Arenas' case, he got suspended for 50 games. Ron Artest went into the stands. I know he belted someone. It's a completely different story. But he got full season suspension. You know what I mean? And again, it's guys like Ja Morant who show a gun, and he only gets an 8-game suspension. And a lot of those games he already served whilst he was already out before the suspension was even delivered. So again, I know this doesn't take into play completely the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, but again, it sort of brings forward that whole player empowerment concept, and we need to obviously be fair on all fronts. We don't want one party taking a full slice of the pie, but we also want to make sure that there's reasonable agreements across the board and reasonable terms put forward in this new collective bargaining agreement. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I don't think it'll get to that extent with the lockout, but I guess we'll wait and see. So this is going to be an interesting one. What do you think? Any additional comments? Sorry, I went on a bit of a spiel.
No, that's right. So with this whole thing, I think I'm going to keep it blunt because I'm not super knowledgeable about the whole bargaining agreement. But from what it sounds like the hard cap being overspent, I think it's good because ultimately big markets, I guess, or big cities like Los Angeles, New York, Miami, they have leverage to kind of get these massive big names in free agency. And I think with this agreement, it makes it just more competitive around the league because you're kind of forced to draft up because teams don't have such a high salary cap. So kind of like how Golden State have done it and how Memphis have done it, I think you got to respect it because they've drafted guys like Steph, Clay, Draymond. They've drafted these from the ground up. They've developed them, and now they can pay them. They don't go out necessarily. I know they got Kevin Durant, but they won championships without him. Like Memphis, they've drafted Jaren, Brooks, I guess, Zaire Williams. The list goes on. I just think that the NBA needs to clear up on the high salary caps that teams can actually afford, and I think it's kind of become a bit of a whirlwind because Clippers getting Paul George, Kawhi. I know that was a couple seasons ago, and one free agency class. It's just insane to me. So I think it's kind of a good thing, and I know the agreement kind of, you mentioned when we were talking about this off camera, the one and done rule, is that they want to add that in.
What was that?
They're looking to add the one and done rule into the...
Yeah, sorry. The audio cut off a little bit there. But yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So with the one and done rule, I think there's positives and negatives. I mean, you could probably touch on them now. In terms of the 2004 NBA draft, you look at it, guys wanted to make the jump straight away. But you look at guys like Sebastian Telfair, and any other of those high school prospects that weren't maybe the top 5 candidates in that draft class of 2004. If you had the NIL rule back then and they went to college, I think they would have become much better prospects than they are, or than they were when they came into the league, because they didn't have that ability to earn off their name. You know what I mean? I think guys don't really need to make that jump. If they're not ready, I don't think they should do it, because we've seen so many instances where high schoolers have made the jump from one level to the next, and they only do it because they want to earn bank. But they don't need to do that now, and I think it kind of saturates the league with guys who are underdeveloped, aren't ready for it, and then it kind of just, that talent pool, yes, they're talented guys, don't get me wrong, but they sort of just, it drops the talent level down, and kind of, you don't get that same readiness that you used to have back in the 90s and the early 2000s when guys were forced to go to college, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope what I said makes a little bit of sense, but I'm not super knowledgeable on this topic. But
that's all right. I think
it made a little bit of sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. At the end of the day, the way I look at it is, as at the end of the day, we just have to touch on it because it is a big sort of topic and it's been discussed quite a bit as of recent time.
Nah, you summed it up like perfectly.
I hope so. Hopefully I don't get
maybe
flamed.
if I prepared a bit. Nah, definitely.
Hopefully I don't get flamed in the comments.
Nah.
So the next bit of news, the Hall of Fame class of 2023 was named. Some notable names in that crop. So the 4 NBA players and the 1 WNBA legend who have been named into the Hall of Fame for 2023 are none other than Dirk Nowitzki, Flash Dwayne Wade, Tony Parker, and the man who recently had his jersey put into the rafters of the Staples Center or Crypto.com Arena, Pau Gasol. And current Spurs head coach, Greg Popovich. I didn't even see that. So he's going to be Pop's getting.
Bro, I didn't even know, man.
Yeah, Pop's getting added into the Hall of Fame, and so is one of the former Spurs coaching staff and WNBA legend Becky Hammond. So it's a good crop, a really big list of players. I'm excited to hear their Hall of Fame speeches, and they're all well deserving. I don't really think there's any debates as to the list of players and coaches here that were obviously added into the Hall of Fame, and I think they've earned their rightful place in the Hall of Fame, which will take place on August 12th, 2023. Have you got anything to add to that, Marcus?
Not really. All deserving candidates. Happy to see Pau Gasol in the Hall of Fame, but we kind of knew that. Dirk Nowitzki, Dwayne Wade, Tony Parker, even Pop, they're all eventually going to make the Hall of Fame. So I never get really too stuck on the Hall of Fame topic because, some of them are mostly bound to happen. So, there's the occasional guy who misses out, but obviously there's no debate. All these guys deserve to make it. Becky Hammond, that's pretty cool that she made the Hall of Fame too as the first women's assistant coach.
Yeah, and
first coach.
She's aspiring to be the first woman head coach in the NBA, which she nearly got close to doing.
That's dope. That's sick.
And I think she got a lot of respect in the NBA circles, and I think it's only a matter of time before it happens. And I think she's got a really good basketball mind, regardless, male, female, whatever gender she is. I know that they like to keep things very. Nowadays they like to diversify, but back then it was very male driven industry. But I think it shouldn't matter if you've got if you've got a good knowledge of the game and you're a good basketball mind. It shouldn't matter at the end of the day. Yeah, no,
100%. No, it's just cool to recognize when you're the first to do something in anything. It's just she's kind of inspiring the next. Who knows? Maybe she won't be the first head coach in the NBA, but maybe another inspiring WNBA or former WNBA player can step up and coach a men's team in the NBA. So
100%.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool.
Definitely. I actually didn't see the snub list. I didn't see who missed out, so I'd be interested to know that, but I don't have it in front of me here. But there probably would have been some controversial ones. But there's always this whole debate about this, should they only specify it to be an NBA Hall of Fame and have a Basketball Hall of Fame separate, because they're always this person isn't deserving of this person shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, because at the end of the day it's a Basketball Hall of Fame, correct? It's a Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame.
Lindsay Gaze, I'm sure heaps of people wouldn't know who that is, but she's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So at the end of the day, it's it's a subjective matter, and it takes into account your full basketball career, both overseas, if you played in the NBA as well, if you played solely in the NBA and a bit of college, whatever it may be, but ultimately your whole career is determined here, and it doesn't necessarily depict your career in the US League or wherever you played strictly in the NBA. So I don't know, that might change who makes the Hall of Fame based off that, because not everyone played in the NBA. But again, I think I like the way they do it now. I think it's fair. I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be naysayers and haters regarding the names that get put in. But I think this year was a pretty fair list.
Yeah, no, definitely a fair list.
Speaking of Hall of Famers, so we are going to possibly some guys that may be in the Hall of Fame in the future, and we're going to talk a little bit about the McDonald's All-American game, which I think was one of the best games as of recent years. I didn't watch the full game, but I did catch the extended highlights, and there were some really exciting prospects there. And obviously, the attention is very much circled around Bronny James and the fact that he's LeBron James' son, and he's not far away from playing in the NBA. He's currently projected to be a top 10 pick in the 2024 draft. Still undecided where he's going to go to college. He impressed. Finished with 15 points of 5 of 8 shooting from 3. Provided some pretty good defense as well. The West team ended up the East team ended up taking it out after one of my favorite prospects, Isaiah Collier, missed 2 free throws right at the end in clutch time, and he was only 5 of 12 from the 3-throw line, even though he was an efficient 9 of 14 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, finished with the game high 25 points. He's going to USC next year. He's one of my favorite prospects. I think he's going to be I think he's NBA ready. I think he's pro ready. I think there's parts of his game where it probably still needs to improve. But in terms of his first step, his ability to create his own shot, ability to get to the rack, pass out, and he's one of the best passers in the class. He didn't show it in this game, but I think, I'm excited to see what he can do at USC next year and eventually when he does get to the league. And also, shout out to DJ Wagner, who finished with 19 points, 3 assists, all in the second half. He started the game with 0 at the half, and you thought, is this guy, everyone was saying this guy's a top 3 recruit, and he's not showing out in the McDonald's game, but he ended up bringing him back from the dead and helped them take home the victory, ended up winning the MVP. He was another one of my favorite prospects, and a really cool story about him is he's a 3rd generation McDonald's All-American. So his grandfather,
3 generations of Wagners.
Yeah, his grandfather Milt was All-American. He gave birth to Dewan Wagner, which was DJ Wagner's dad, who played with LeBron James back in 2002, 2003 when Dewan Wagner got drafted. 2003, 2004, Dewan Wagner got drafted in 2002, and he would have been one of the best players, in my opinion, in the league had he not had that health concerns. He had some really major health issues and obviously stopped him from taking that next step. But then to see his son, who literally was like a spitting image of him from when they were younger, to see all 3 of those generations be McDonald's All-Americans just shows, basketball is well and truly in their DNA and in their blood. And, it's an impressive sight to see that, they all have that ability to be elite basketball players. And I'm excited to see what he can do at Kentucky and eventually, hopefully, play well in the league and have a more prosperous career than his dad. And touch wood, he has no health issues, no health concerns, and he can become a really, really superstar NBA player. So those are the prospects I liked. Any prospects that caught your eye in this game? And I guess what were your thoughts on the McDonald's All-American game on a whole?
Ultimately, I didn't actually watch this game live. I've seen some highlights, but the highlight video wasn't necessarily the longest. It was kind of a 5-minute, short, little montages they do. But I have looked at kind of these mixtapes individually of players who look pretty intriguing from this the whole McDonald's All-American, weekend, I guess, with the dunk contest, with the game. And one player that kind of really caught my eye is, I think he's projected number 1 pick, Matas Buzelis.
Yeah. He
looks insane to me. Yeah, he's definitely got it. I don't think his stat line was too, he didn't really do heaps in that All-Star game, but just watch him individually. This guy, he's athletic, he's super bouncy, he plays 2 sides of the ball, he's got a handle, he's got a shot, he's basically just this guy's a freak. But moving on from him, also, probably my favourite prospect from this class, it looks like, Stephon Castle. I think this guy's going to UConn.
Yeah.
Well, when I watch him, he just gives me SGA vibes. Nikhil Alexander-Walker vibes. Just the way he moves, he's very smooth. He gets to his spots easily. Great off the mid-range. Just very versatile. Has a bunch of combos. I think he'll fit in right away in the league, I think. Hopefully he lives up, because I've put a massive, coal just there on him. But his change of pace is just... Yeah, his change of pace just looks like terrific. Specifically for a high school player. And yeah, besides that, I mean, Bronny James, obviously, like, who isn't intrigued to see how Bronny goes? He had 15, shot 5 for 5 from 3, all threes. Hey, he's performing at the All-American level, I guess. And many people were even questioning whether he'd be All-American, but to see that he performed, I think that's a good sign. Wishing the best for Bronny. I don't know how good he is yet, but, I hope he does well. And then, of course, DJ Wagner. I mean, what is he, 6'2"?
6'2", 6'3", about that, yeah.
Yeah, he's got the package there, super quick. Floaters, tough finishes, mid-range.
Get out in transition.
3. Yeah, get out in transition. He looks very intriguing as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Besides that, I was intrigued on Page's son, Page Stojakovic. I need to look more into him, but looks like he can shoot the 3. Hopefully, he's a good NBA player. He'll probably make the NBA. Let's be real. So hoping
anyone with a name of a former player or a son of a former player usually gets a chance at least. For the most part, so especially if you're a high kind of prospect as Andrej Stojakovic is, I think you'll probably see him in the league at some point. I think he'll develop. I think he's got that mentality where he'll constantly improve and he'll want to get better. So he didn't have the best showing. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well in this game, but again, I think he's got the tools. He's got the traits to be able to take it to the next level, and it'll be interesting to see how he plays out.
For sure. No, yeah. But, yeah, I think those, 5 guys, like, they all have terrific ceilings. But, yeah, I kind of really start getting into, like, prospects once the college season starts to hit.
For sure.
I am aware of a lot of these names, but, like, a lot of them I'm still not, like, 100% on who they are. Kind of just my league NBA 2K type setup for me. So, my knowledge isn't too good. It's kind of based off a video game, which isn't too terrific. But with that being said, like, it was good watching Stephon Castle. Like, it's always good to see, I guess, players coming up, because you follow them from high school to college to the pros, and I don't know, it's just kind of cool, and they don't always turn out to be terrific. Being a fan of guys like Dennis Smith Jr. since his high school mixtape came out. Like, it doesn't always go to plan, but nevertheless, I think it's pretty cool. And I think if you're a basketball fan in general, it's probably the thing you should be doing. So,
I think there was a stat. It was like 60% of players who play in the McDonald's All-American game go on to play in the NBA. There is a high,
chance they don't make it as well.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a chance that you don't, but again, 60% it's quite a substantial number. So, you look at, there's 24 guys on that roster, there's going to be a fair chunk of them that, end up playing. So it depends on who they are, and it'll be interesting to see whether all of these guys make it at some point, or I don't think all of them will, but, it would be interesting to see out of the lot who has the most successful career going forward. And I'm always excited about high school hoops and college hoops, and always doing the deep dives and the draft analysis, which we'll do down the track as well, so I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Leave some comments, any feedback you have, any suggestions for future ideas, for any videos that you might want to see, and just show us that love, show us that support, because we expect to do this every single week, and we'd love to hear from you, and love to continue to make content like this, which we enjoy doing. So without further ado, that wraps it up for this week's episode, and peace out, stay safe. This has been your co-host Danko. That's my boy Marcus.
Thank you guys for watching. Yeah, look, we said a 30 to 45, but you know, I just had too much fun hopping on talking ball with Danko. So hopefully you guys all enjoyed. If you did manage to watch, make sure you know you do all that good stuff. Leave some engagement in the comment section. That's the main thing. We love our engagement. So hey, if you have any video suggestions or you know any feedback, let us know. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for me for tonight.
Peace out, guys. All the best, and we'll speak to you soon.